state agencies that are going to be sharing. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but just to let you guys know the order of presentation, we'll have the Louisiana Department of Children and Family Services, who will be sharing about their sheltering procedures. They are the state entity that oversees sheltering in our state. And then we'll also have the Louisiana Department of Health talking about medical needs sheltering. And then finally, we'll have the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Protection. I said preparedness, I'm sorry, I get it right. GOHSEP, and they will be sharing about their programs around housing and sheltering. So just a reminder, please mute your mics except for the speakers, and we'll go ahead and get started with our first presenter from Department of Children and Family Services.
Okay.
You forgot the Disability Service 101 book.
Okay. Everyone can see my slide? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We can see it, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my name's Billy Miguez. I'm the Deputy Director of Emergency Preparedness for the Department of Children and Family Services. We are the lead for sheltering in the state under mass care. So we'll go over our staffing so you can get an idea of how we're set up in ESF 6 with our full-time staff. We are across the entire state. Top block under headquarters, that's our full-time staff here in Baton Rouge during activations or emergencies. We are the full-time staff in our Emergency Operations Center. We're led by our director, Mr. Ricky Monte. The second block is our lead area manager. So in each of the regions across the state, and these are DCFS regions, they do not align to GOHSEP or LDH regions. We have a lead area manager. Those are DCFS staff that lead emergency preparedness within those regions. And they are also aligned with regional coordinators who work directly for emergency preparedness that cover down on multiple regions. You'll see how they fall in across the state on this chart. This is another shot of our staffing. We do have two staff that are on a military deployment. They are members of the Louisiana National Guard and will be going throughout the next year. We do have staff that are covering down. So of note in Region 1 and Region 4, which is Orleans and Thibodeau for DCFS, Jessica Lacoste is on military deployment, but Melvin Jackson is covering down on her region in Thibodeau. This is just an illustration of our Emergency Operations Center here at DCFS when all is activated. This includes sheltering, evacuation, sheltering, and DSNAP. Typically, all these folks won't be activated at the same time. It kind of goes in stages, evacuations and sheltering, and then weeks down the road, DSNAP. So it kind of rolls into each other. So, this just illustrates the extent of management that goes across ESF 6 and sheltering and DSNAP. The first thing we're going to talk about is registration for evacuation. So just this past year, this is new for us. We implemented a new registration system. We call it SAFE, Shelter Applications for Emergencies. In the previous years, we used the Electronic Tracking Network, ETN. Sure, some of you have heard that. That system was used extensively for Hurricane Laura and Ida and Delta to track evacuees in state sheltering. This system was borrowed or used from Texas. They're no longer supporting it like we need them to, so we went ahead and got a vendor and developed a Louisiana system, and that is safe. It is implemented across the state, not only for the state and state shelters, but also parishes are starting to adopt the system, and they're getting trained by regional coordinators. So that's in play for this hurricane season. The last bullet, American Red Cross, they are on the call, and they'll go over their new electronic registration system. So we're tasked with supporting, along with other agencies, the state-assisted parish pickup points. And these are the three parishes that are we focus on. So Calcasieu Parish, Orleans, and Jefferson. Of note, if you look under Jefferson, you see Vineyard Church. That is a new parish pickup point they picked up this year. They actually exercised with the state supporting agencies a few weeks ago, actually last month, and they did a walkthrough of the Lario last week. So they're pretty set. Orleans with the Smoothie King Center did a tabletop last Friday, so I believe they're set for this year. This just illustrates the state-assisted evacuation plan and the evacuation flow for Orleans. Just note that they use several different methods to evacuate, starting with bus, for medical needs sheltering and paratransit. They have the ability to use rail, and then there's also the federal activation of MSY and to evacuate through air. So just a framework that we can use as a template to follow. This is where we start getting into our shelters and what we see the sequence of fill is for Southeast Louisiana. Everybody knows that's where the population is, and for the most part, that's why we exist, is to support that population and the number of people that need assistance in evacuating and sheltering. So we cover Smoothie King, that's their parish pickup point for Orleans. UPT is the train, MSY is the air, and that flows down into our critical transportation needs shelters and then any associated medical needs shelters. And the same thing goes with Jefferson Parish. We have the same thing for Southwest Louisiana. I think we all hope that if we evacuate Southwest Louisiana, we're not evacuating Southeast Louisiana. So more than likely, if we have to assist in evacuations for Calcasieu and Cameron Parish, they will go to the Alexandria Mega Shelter. So we'll look at our in-state sheltering capacities. This is a total of in-state shelter capacities, and I'll go over the categories here. CTNS is our critical transportation needs sheltering. That's those folks that cannot evacuate themselves and require state assistance evacuations and sheltering. This is the bed space we have in the state sheltering piece of it. Medical needs sheltering, federal medical stations, that's managed by LDH, along with the medical needs shelters. Just of note on the medical needs shelters, we do at DCFS handle the logistics and administration portions of these shelters. SOS is a sex offender shelter, so there is a plan if there's any sex offenders that cannot be sheltered by law in a congregate or non-congregate setting. David Wade Correctional Facility has capacity to house or shelter these folks, not in a jail, just sheltering. We take care of unaccompanied minors that need sheltering in this is done at a undisclosed location here in Baton Rouge, and then point-to-point sheltering, and we'll go over that in a bit. Point-to-point sheltering is agreements between southern parishes that evacuate with northern parishes to do the sheltering. This is what our stance is, or where we set for point-to-point shelterings as we speak. I know GOHSEP, along with us and the parishes, are working to refine this, but they're color-coded. The parishes in the south have point-to-point agreements with parishes in the north. This is with minimum state involvement, is parish to parish, where they establish contracts, the wraparound services, the shelter staff, and everything that goes along with sheltering. I'm gonna bump up a couple slides and just want to point out, or this slide, this is the number that's in that point-to-point sheltering. It almost equals with the state shelter. So it's very, very important to us that this stays in place and the parishes can maintain these agreements with the northern parishes. These are our critical transportation needs shelters, and where we set today. On the Shreveport side, we have Juella, Riverview, and these numbers on the side is their capacities, and the Bossier City or Brookshire Center in Bossier City. On the east side of Louisiana, we have Bastrop, Louisville. This is brand new. We just had a signed agreement last month with this facility. It's basically a warehouse that we can stand up as a shelter. Not a bad place. You see Allah's got a dotted line around it. That's another one of our CTNs, but the building is having some maintenance issues that we're working with the city of Allah, who owns the building, to correct. This will probably be the last on our sequence of fill. We'll use it if we really have to. Everybody knows the Alexandria Mega Shelter. And then we also have one in South Louisiana at ULL at the Blackham Coliseum. And that equals our total. Medical needs shelter. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but because LDH is going to cover this, but these are the shelters that we have agreements. Most of them are on universities, with the exception of Bossier City at Bossier City Civic Center and the Hyman Center in Lafayette. And then we'll go over to host state agreements. If you notice, we are sheltering spaces when we talk about a Southeast Louisiana evacuation. So GOHSEP, in the lead with us assisting, has agreements with these states to take evacuees when we run out of critical transportation needs sheltering in Louisiana. This is an ongoing process. We do have a couple written agreements. There's also some handshake deals. So it's pretty solid. I know GOHSEP's worked hard on it the last couple months and have some pretty good agreements in place, whether it's written or handshake. But typically, these states will support us, especially Texas. Okay, so that's a quick high-level overview of DCFS ESF6 sheltering. Bambi, do you want to open it up to questions now or later?
I only see one from Paul. They said we were told that no registration of evacuees will take place at CalPSU PPP. They will just be doing manual manifests. Is that true?
That is correct, and that is to facilitate and expedite people being evacuated and not being held up with a registration. They just do the manual paper registration tickets that these parishes have. That goes along with the bus. That creates our bus manifest. That is the bus manifest. And when they get to the CTN shelters or medical needs shelters, they're going to be registered into SAFE at that time.
Thank you very much, Billy. Let's see, I do see another question. How will the sex offenders be triaged?
So our process when we're talking about state shelters, they first and foremost should identify themselves. If that's not the case, the new SAFE system on the backside of the system is matched with the state police sex offender registry. So the system, when they get to the shelter, should pick it up. The first line of defense is them self-identifying. Second is in our registration system. Once that happens, then we'll make arrangements. We'll definitely coordinate with law enforcement and that type of transportation to get up to the sex offender shelter if they wish to be sheltered at the sex offender shelter. What they cannot do is be sheltered in a congregate setting with other folks.
Okay, thanks, Billy. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next presenter, which will be the Department of Health. Just so you guys know, this is being recorded, so I will send this recording out to all of the entire email list that I have. So if you're looking for that, and also the information that was shared today.
Afternoon, this is Heather. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Again, my name is Heather Oland. I am with the LDH Emergency Operations Center at the Bureau for Community Preparedness, and I will be discussing the medical needs shelter and the process between a telephone triage call that we may receive up until they get to the medical needs shelter. So Billy kind of touched on this a little bit, but just a little refresher. These are our different shelter types. The medical needs shelter houses an evacuee who needs almost constant medical care, but they're not sick enough to be in the hospital at this point. So they need some basic medical services that we are able to provide for them. A federal medical station is operated when our state's capabilities are exceeded, and it's a cache of medical supplies and equipment that are used for setting up a temporary non-acute medical facility. And then we have our critical transportation need shelters that house evacuees who may need some assistance with transportation. We have our general population shelters that house evacuees. These are typically ran by American Red Cross. Parishes are faith-based organizations. We have the sex offender shelters that house the registered sex offenders, and then the unaccompanied minor shelter. So medical needs shelters are congregate facilities that provide a safe refuge to maintain the current health, safety, and well-being of anyone who is medically dependent. As I stated, they're not sick enough to be in the hospital, but they do need medical assistance and they have no other option for sheltering. We do strongly suggest that they be accompanied by a caregiver. However, we're not going to turn anyone away if they do not have a caregiver. So we have different levels of care. Anyone that falls within that 0 to 2 is typically referred to a general shelter, and that is someone that may need just routine personal care service, such as help to the restroom, a little bit of assistance with eating, but they have no emergent medical conditions. Or it could be someone with a disability such as blindness, hearing impairment, or an amputation, but again, no emergent medical condition. And then in level 3 and 4, those are the ones that are most likely eligible to be admitted into a medical needs shelter. And that is somebody that may need assistance with medication administration. They may need monitoring by a nurse. They may be dependent on equipment such as oxygen. And then if someone is acutely ill, they fall in that level 5 and require hospital admission. And Billy already showed this slide, so I won't spend too much time on it. But these are our medical needs shelters and federal medical stations throughout the state. The only state-operated shelter is our mega shelter in Alexandria, and that is a dual M&S and FNS. We have a total capacity of 1,640 for our medical needs shelters, with an additional 200 at Nichols post-storm. And then a capacity of 1,000 evacuees at our federal medical stations. So the admission process for a medical needs shelter, all individuals must go through triage before they can be admitted to a medical needs shelter. We have a triage form with 20 questions that the nurse asks and assesses on the evacuee to determine whether or not they're eligible for admission. This could be completed over the phone if a person calls into the telephone triage line, or it can be done at the site of the medical needs shelter. If they do call in on the phone, the nurse makes a recommendation as to whether or not they are a candidate, but that final call is not made until they actually arrive at the shelter. So that phone call does not reserve a space at any shelter. So if they do qualify for criteria over the phone, then they're instructed to come to the medical needs shelter for further triage. And then once they're triaged on site and they meet that admission criteria, the registration process is started and they are admitted to the medical needs shelter. However, if they do not meet the criteria, they are referred to the most appropriate facility based on the needs that they have. So the purpose of our telephone triage is to provide information regarding the different sheltering options to our evacuating persons. And it helps determine eligibility for admittance into the medical needs shelter or what shelter would be best for them. So throughout the state, we have 9 triage numbers. They're all toll free, and there's multiple lines assigned to those numbers. The lines are routinely tested, and they are answered by LDH nurses. The lines are generally activated pre-storm. The decision is made somewhere around Hurricane Hour 84 by the state Surgeon General. And Hurricane Hour refers to when tropical force winds are expected to hit the coast. So this would be 84 hours before we would expect those winds to hit the coast. So these are the telephone lines within the 9 regions. They are turned on during an emergency, depending on the need and location of the shelters. And also it's important to note that 211 is a resource to be routed to the appropriate triage line. So some of the most common medical conditions that callers may call in with, trying to decide whether or not they are eligible for the medical needs shelter, are Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, asthma, any type of cardiac condition, cystic fibrosis, dementia, diabetes, emphysema, Parkinson's, psychosis, seizures, wounds. So a wide variety of different medical conditions. And this is an example of what someone may call in with and kind of how we would triage that. If there was an evacuee that has a health history of arthritis, and they called in, the nurse would go through those assessment questions. If she determined, if she assessed that the caller was bedbound and having acute pain that was not being managed at home, that evacuee would be referred to a hospital to be able to get their pain under control. If they were wheelchair bound and had some complications, but those complications could be taken care of with some basic medical care, they would be a good candidate for the medical needs shelter. And if they had arthritis, but they were self-ambulating and had no acute pain, no immediate problems, they could be referred to a general population shelter. So during the call, when an evacuee calls in to determine whether or not they are eligible for the medical needs shelter, if it is deemed that they are a good candidate, the nurse will go over a list of items to bring to that shelter, and we suggest that they bring a 5-day supply. If they have any medical orders, if they're currently being treated by a doctor or have dialysis, we would ask them to bring those orders in with them. If they have a home health or hospice folder, we would ask them to bring that with them as well. Any medications that they take on a daily basis, bring in an original container with the patient's name on it, and always encourage them to try to pick up any refills before they come into the shelter. Comfortable clothing for at least 5 days. Make sure they bring their eyeglasses. We just want to remind them that the patient and the caregiver will be sleeping on a cot, and hospital beds and air mattresses may not be available. They should bring any personal toiletry items, any special dietary foods they may have, such as Ensure, a supply of diapers if that is something that they utilize, any medical equipment that they routinely use at home, such as glucose monitoring, any assisted devices, any tube feeding supplies, including their formula and the pump. And again, ostomy supplies, IV medication supplies, oxygen concentrators. So anything that could help us assist in taking care of them, they will need to bring with them. We do allow service animals, but personal pets are not allowed in the shelter. If they come with a service animal, they need to bring food and supplies for that service animal. And then we remind them that no alcohol, firearms, or weapons are allowed in the shelter, as well as there's no smoking in the shelter. Any questions?
Heather, we have a question. How does someone call in for triage?
And the response is also in the chat for that one.
Okay, and
I'm sorry. Can you answer it for the recording?
yes. So they would call one of those triage lines within the region. I shared the numbers earlier in the slide, or they could always call 211, and they would be referred to the triage line within their region. Okay,
and then one other question that we often hear with EMDAC is for people who need the medical shelter, how do you avoid those people going into nursing homes or into institutional settings if they were living in the community and this emergency situation happens? What do y'all have anything in place that helps to guide people away from those institutional settings?
I'll jump in here. So for sheltering situations, oftentimes homes are destroyed, and there's a team that includes a number of experts that help identify housing options Sometimes those options are institutions, but not always, but it's until the housing can be reinstituted in those parishes. And so there are multiple options. Sometimes there are trailers and other options, but there's a team that does case management to discharge individuals to the most appropriate locations.
Thank you, Dr. Wander. And then we have one other question I see in the chat. How can homebound seniors with medical concerns be brought to shelters?
If they need transportation assistance with the shelters, the parish OEP or DRC would handle that. If they needed an ambulance service to transport, that would be arranged on an individual basis.
Okay, and so just to clear, make it clear for anyone who's listening, the OEP is the Parish Office of Emergency Preparedness, and that's who they should call, your local parish entity. Okay, I don't see any other questions, and I don't think we need a break.
Bambi, this is
Billy?
Billy. Yeah, Red Cross is on the line. They have a couple slides behind mine. You mind if we jump to that one first?
Sure, that's fine. And I said, we don't have to take a break. We have 2 interpreters, and I just want to give a shout out to the to Special Needs and Parent Support Services of Louisiana, owned and operated by Karen Scallon, for sponsoring one of the interpreters, and for the Louisiana Commission for the Deaf for sponsoring the other interpreter. So Red Cross, we'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mustafa with Red Cross. I'm the Regional Mass Care and Logistics Manager for Louisiana. Basically, my job is to support anything with sheltering, feeding, distribution, emergency supplies, and anything related to logistics. During any kind of emergency, our main goal is to support, especially during evacuations, our main goal is to support DCFS with staffing some of the general population shelters. During small scale or isolated disasters such as tornado or localized flooding, we support the parishes directly, and that's what we call a level 1 or level 2 mass care activation. Right now, since after COVID, our primary way to shelter clients or evacuees is congregate sheltering. Basically, it's either a gym or any open floor building, and we set up that with cots and medical cots, and provide feeding and any other necessary supplies that those evacuees or clients need. During steady state or blue skies, we work with the parishes and also with faith-based organizations to identify buildings and survey those buildings, and making sure that they have the necessary items to open as a shelter, and also making sure that they are ADA compliance, and what are the requirements to, if it's not, also how we can do a temporary modification to make it ADA compliance. That's the main goal of the shelter surveys. It's not like a pass-fail survey. It's just collecting information to identify those buildings ahead of time. So at a time when we need to choose a facility, we can just go through that list. Billy earlier mentioned that Red Cross recently implemented, after many years of using paper registration, since last year, we started using shelter registration, electronic shelter registration. As of right now, this app is fully functioning and it's been working since April 2023. We used it so far once here in Louisiana during the wildfires. National still doing some updates on it, but it's just as improvement updates, nothing major. Next slide, Billy. Thank you. So whenever we open a shelter, we also have health services, mental health services, spiritual care, and disability integration, either on site or they will support virtually on the phone. However, for health services, whenever the shelter is more than with a capacity with more than 50 individuals, they are required to be in the shelter. Those are nurses and they are licensed by Louisiana Department of Health. And they usually help with replacing medications or medical devices for the clients. One of the things that also we have is for individuals that are, we have interpretation line, and that's also include sign language. The sign language will require an internet because it's going to be a video call. However, for any other languages, it's just can be on the line. We also have, we maintain around 700 plus facilities that we try to keep them updated on a regular basis throughout the Louisiana. They are not owned by Red Cross or anything like that. They are just owned by either the parishes, or schools and faith-based organizations to be used as shelters. I believe that's all I have for Red Cross. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much for joining in and sharing. I don't see any questions, but definitely we appreciate Red Cross's work in these situations. So next, I think we'll go on to our last presenter, which is GOHSEP.
Okay, can y'all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're going to talk about the temporary housing and how GOHSEP falls into the realm of sheltering, which is mainly post-sheltering and recovery when we talk about individual assistance. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Underwood. Katie? Katie, are you there?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. You got it.
Okay.
Slides are up.
All right, we can go ahead to the next one. What I'm going to cover is our ongoing recovery efforts. As Mel mentioned, I'm the director of individual assistance here at GOHSEP, and we support the longer-term recovery efforts, short-term that rolls into long-term for individuals. So going to cover right now what's still going on, which we've got Laura Delta. We still have FEMA direct housing units in the southwest part of the state. As of this week, there's 146 households still in FEMA direct housing for Hurricane Laura Delta. See, the majority of them are owners, handful of renters. The majority are in Calcasieu. Currently, direct housing is approved by FEMA through the end of August. GOHSEP has submitted a request for an extension, and we continue to work to help folks transition with our recovery partners. and work mostly with the Office of Community Development with the Restore program and the Rapid Rehousing program that is through the LHC and that OCD funds. So we are currently awaiting FEMA's response to our our request to extend. Give me to the next slide, Mel. So in addition to Large Delta, we do still have some things going on for IDA. We have both IDA sheltering, which Mel mentioned. That's the longer-term non-congregate sheltering program. And then FEMA does have a direct housing program as well. And we can go to the next slide, Mel. I covered this the last time we gathered, but just a quick recap. IDA sheltering was funded by FEMA initially, and then as of January 1st of last year, been completely funded through the state. The program ended May 31st of last year, but there were a lot of folks that still had simply not recovered. We're waiting on the CDBG-DR programs to see if they were eligible, trying to get additional assistance to be able to complete their recovery. So we allowed them, even though the program ended, to continue to remain in units. Last fall, we required that they all participate in DCM as a condition of continuing being sheltered in non-congregate sheltering settings. In April of this year was the final deadline. We've made a lot of progress, but I'll show you the numbers in just a second. Not everybody's quite out. We're still trying to get the last few settled. But we continue to work with OCD and make sure that folks have resources available to them to try to get them into more permanent or more appropriate temporary housing. The last piece of that is that we are looking at sales for those that just need longer and don't have another temporary option. We got the opinion from the AG's office to allow us that, but we're still working with the division on the process. So it's still an ongoing, we don't yet have the ability to sell shelter units to folks. Okay, we can move to the next slide, Mel. We'll look at the numbers.
Hey, Katie, before we move on, one of the questions that popped up was the acronym. So can you explain the DCMP?
Yeah, sure thing. DCMP is the Disaster Case Management Program. It is an individual assistance, was under FEMA's individual assistance umbrella. It's part of the individual assistance program and policy guide that FEMA offers, one of their menu of options available to the states post major declared disaster. But that's what allows us to have case managers available to help households come up with a recovery plan and to find resources to support that. So this is the sheltering numbers for the IDA non-congregate sheltering program. You'll see the ever sheltered, which was over 5,000 units, 5,366. As of this week, we have 106 deployed units. Today we're at 101. So we're continually getting those units back. But of the 106 as of earlier this week, 76 were still in sheltered status, 30 transition requested. What sheltered and transition requested means, sheltered is that they're still using the unit. There's somebody still sheltering in the unit. The transition requested are ones that they're either non-compliant with program rules and we're proactively working to get them to vacate the unit, or they have said, hey, we no longer need the unit, you can come get it now. And then I have those numbers broken down by parish. And then FEMA's also running IDA direct housing. As of this week, there are 981 households still in FEMA trailers post IDA. And you can see, again, same thing. We submitted the request to have that extended. It's currently approved through the end of August. We requested an extension. We're waiting on FEMA's response to that request. You can see the breakdown. We've got 216 renters, 765 owners, and the breakdown by parishes where those units are located. That's all I have on the housing and sheltering support for ongoing recovery efforts. And that's our contact information. That's myself. And then I have a branch manager that works with me. Her name is Jackie Gazea, and I have her contact information on there as well. And that's all I have, unless anyone has questions, Bambi.
Thanks, Katie. Does anyone have questions for Katie or for any of our other presenters? Okay, will there be high quality masks available? ventilators, and other precautions for people sheltering who are immunocompromised or high risk for COVID?
Hey, this is Billy with DCFS. Yes, at our congregate shelters, the state shelters, will have masks available.
And Billy, one thing I'm not sure if you touched on, I'm managing the technology, so I could have missed this. But one thing at the general population shelters that I know you guys have that help those people who may need some help, but not necessarily meet the medical needs shelter criteria, is having personal care attendants to help those peoples with like their activities of daily living. And so you guys, I know you guys try and include as much resources as possible to keep people in the general population and being supported as much as they're needed.
Yeah, and we do maintain a contract for personal care attendants. We have multiple vendors. One of the lessons learned from Hurricane Ida was you can't have enough personal care attendants. So our vendor list count went up since Hurricane Ida. So I think we're sitting in a positive place in regards to that.
And additionally, I know that you guys, the DCFS and other American Red Cross have really worked to with partners within the disability community to have resources there and kind of being very responsive, I think, to ensuring that we have resources there. So for instance, maybe sensory kits for our people who have autism or, those autism type conditions that, require that, having places within the shelters for, quiet areas as much as possible. So I don't know if you guys if any of y'all want to talk more about that, but I do know that y'all have worked on that over the past several years.
Yeah, you're correct, Bambi. So on our autistic side of it, we do have autism kits in each one of our large CTN shelters. And we also have isolation tents that can be used, as isolation for COVID, for example, or to move a family that needs to be isolated for those purposes. In the past, when we're speaking autism, we try to get those families into to another locations that's better suited for them once they're identified. So we do work that, and as I mentioned, we do have tents in all of our critical transportation needs shelters to isolate folks for any reason that needs.
We have a question like, so y'all keeping up with like the count of those kits available, if they're functional, and how will folks know about these, because they don't often ask.
Yeah, each of our shelter managers and our lead area managers has a count. It's in each of those shelters. They are functional. We did recover after the last time we used them. So they're there, and are they functional? Yes, they are.